Before you hear the rest, let me ask you, what would you do if the very people you sacrificed your life for looked you in the eyes one day and made you feel like you didn't belong anymore? Would you fight? Would you walk away? Or would you let silence speak for you, louder than any screaming ever could? My dear, if you're listening to me right now, sit close, because what I'm about to tell you isn't just a story. It's a wound that healed itself slowly, a lesson stitched into my heart like old fabric that refuses to tear. My name is Margaret, but most call me Granny May. I'm 67 now, bones not as strong as they used to be, voice softer, but memories sharp, sharp enough to cut through time. I wasn't always alone like this. I used to believe in warm holidays, full tables, and a family that stuck together like glue. I believed that love returned when given, that kindness grew roots in people. Oh, how life shows you otherwise. Years ago, it was just me, my husband James, and our little boy Daniel. My world fit inside 2 arms back then. But when I was 40 and Daniel only 7, cancer came like a thief in the night and took James away. Grief has a sound you never forget: silence. A house once filled with laughter becomes painfully quiet. But I didn't have the luxury to fall apart. A boy needed his mother more than I needed my tears. So I worked. Lord knows I worked. Scrubbed floors, folded laundry for strangers, cleaned houses that smelled like wealth I could never afford. Nights, I stood behind a grocery counter half asleep, but when I'd return home and Daniel would wrap his small arms around my waist saying, "One day I'll take care of you, Mom," every ache in my body softened like fresh bread. And I believed him. How could I not? Time moved like seasons. Daniel studied hard, earned a scholarship, built a life I dreamed for him. When he got his first job in finance, I smiled so wide my cheeks hurt. Then came Melissa, pretty, polished, perfect in all the ways magazines love showing women. She smiled politely, thanked me for dinners, but her eyes stayed cold, as if I carried a bit of dust she wished would disappear. Still, I tried. God knows I did. A mother learns to swallow coldness for her child's happiness. When they married, I gifted them something that took years of quiet sacrifice, money from the inheritance James left and the few savings I stitched together dollar by dollar. They wanted a house, a fresh start. I made it happen. I paid the down payment, set up a trust, and arranged monthly contributions so they wouldn't drown under bills. Daniel never asked where the help came from. Melissa never wondered why life became easier so quickly. Love doesn't keep receipts, but pain does. And yet, I never told them. I wanted Daniel to feel like he built his life with his own hands. I wanted Melissa to feel secure, not overshadowed by the mother-in-law she barely tolerated. So I remained silent, invisible, the ghost holding the roof they lived under. Then came last Christmas. My hands were dusted with flour, pie crust half prepared, red cardigan ready as always. For years I carried the tradition, ham in the oven, gifts wrapped neatly, cookies warm on a plate. Daniel always said Christmas wasn't Christmas without me. But last year, my phone stayed silent. Days passed like strangers, no message, no invitation. So I called. Daniel's voice sounded distant, like he was trying not to say something. He mentioned plans weren't certain, they'd let me know. Strange words for a family who never needed planning to be together. December 23rd, instead of a call, I got a text from Melissa, not even Daniel. We're keeping it small this year. Just immediate family. Just immediate family. I read it once, then again slower, as if the words might soften. But they didn't. I felt something inside me crumble, not loud, not dramatic, quietly, like old wallpaper peeling from a wall. I stood there looking at the pie crust, the gifts waiting by the door. For the first time, I realized I was no longer part of what I helped build. Later that evening, I walked past their house. Snow under my boots, breath fogging in the cold air. Their windows glowed warm with laughter. Guests filled the rooms. Wine glasses raised. Holiday music played. The wreath I gifted them hung proudly on the door. And I stood on the sidewalk like a stranger peeking into her own memories. Their neighbor stepped up to throw trash and mentioned casually, "Melissa said they wanted a small gathering. Said your presence makes things tense." Tense. A woman who stitched Christmas into their lives now made things tense. I walked home with a kind of silence that tastes metallic, like truth when it finally arrives. I didn't knock. I didn't call. I simply returned to my cold cocoa, sat beside my small lonely tree, and stared at its blinking lights. No grandbabies tearing wrapping paper. No laughter. Just peace mixed with ache. That night, I opened my old drawer and pulled out every mortgage document I'd kept hidden. The trust papers. Payment records. Receipts. Quiet proof of years they never thanked me for. Proof of love they forgot existed. People think heartbreak screams. Sometimes it signs paperwork instead. I dialed the bank with steady hands. I'd like to stop the mortgage transfers linked to my trust account. Effective immediately. The clerk asked for a reason. I simply said, "Because it's time things stand on their own." I hung up, not with anger but with clarity. That house was built on love they no longer recognized. I didn't destroy anything, I just stopped holding it up. And that, my dear, is where everything changed. What happens when the money they never knew came from you suddenly disappears? When comfort turns to chaos? When the people who forgot your worth finally realize who stood behind their success all along? Let me take you into the moment silence became power. Days after Christmas passed slowly, like old paint drying on a cold wall. Snow still rested heavy on rooftops, neighbors packed away twinkling lights, and the carolers' voices faded from memory. Meanwhile, I sat in my quiet house, watching winter birds peck at seeds outside my frosted window. It was peaceful, almost too peaceful. You know the kind, a peace that comes before a storm. January 2nd. My phone rang. I recognized the caller ID, Daniel. For a moment, I stared at the screen. My heart didn't race like it used to. No expectation. No longing. Just stillness. I let it ring twice before answering. His voice came fast, restless, the tone of a man whose comfortable world had slipped from under him. "Mom, did you cancel the payments?" "The mortgage, something's wrong. We got a notice from the bank." Not a hello. Not how are you. Straight to the thing that finally made me visible again. I answered with a calmness I didn't know I possessed. "I believed you wanted immediate family for Christmas, Daniel. I assumed that meant I shouldn't involve myself where I'm no longer welcome." Silence. Heavy. Cold. Real. He struggled to swallow his words. Mom, we didn't know. I didn't know you were paying for all this. Of course he didn't. He never asked. I told him gently, but firmly, about the trust account, the automatic payments, the years of invisible support. My voice wasn't angry. It was truth with steady legs. He said they'd fix it. That they would figure something out. But I stopped him. It's time you learned to stand on your own feet, son. I carried you long enough. And I meant it. Not to punish. Not to hurt. But because love also means knowing when to let people face their own consequences. When the call ended, I set the phone down and took a long breath. My cocoa was still warm, my house still quiet, my heart strangely light. But peace never stays alone. Soon enough, Melissa arrived. A sharp knock rattled my door. Not a polite one. A demanding one. I opened it and there she stood, coat half-zipped, hair pulled back like a bowstring ready to snap. She barged in without waiting. Are you serious? You cut the payments? We have children. Do you want us homeless? Her voice cracked, not from sorrow, but panic dressed as anger. I sat back down in my old rocking chair, the one that creaked with familiarity. I looked at her, not with bitterness, but with memory. The memory of years she accepted comfort without ever once asking where it came from. Of holidays where she smiled for pictures but never opened her heart. I didn't remove myself from your life first, Melissa. You did that when you made sure I wasn't welcome. She blinked, stunned. She expected yelling, a fight. Not calm truth. She tried again, desperate now. We can't afford the mortgage. Not without the payments. Why would you do this? I lifted my eyes and said softly. Because I realized I was paying to stay in a place I wasn't invited to. Her face fell. Sometimes truth lands heavier than anger ever could. She stormed out eventually, but not before I wished her luck she'd need more than they ever imagined. And just like that, silence settled again. Winter melted into early February. The snow thinned, birdsongs returned, and my garden, though asleep, waited for spring like a patient child. Life felt simple again. Tea in the morning, embroidery by noon, soft music humming through my little home. I didn't expect Daniel to return. But life surprises us in quiet ways. One chilly evening, just as the sky pinkened behind bare branches, I heard another knock. Softer this time. Hesitant. I opened the door and there he was, my son. No pride in his shoulders. No wine-stained laughter. Just a man who finally saw his mother clearly. He stepped inside slowly, holding his breath like the house carried memories he feared breaking. I made tea, chamomile, the kind he loved as a child when fevers kept him up at night. We sat across from each other in silence. The kind that holds its breath, waiting for truth to surface. He finally spoke, voice trembling. Mom. I didn't know. I thought we were doing it on our own. I didn't ask because I guess I never imagined you were still helping. I nodded. Age teaches you that explanations aren't always necessary. Sometimes understanding alone feels like justice. I told him he could visit again, but slowly. One step at a time. When he asked if Melissa could join later, I simply said, "Let's start with you first." And he respected it. He left that night quieter, humbler, a boy returning to the mother who never left his roots. And me? I stayed awake a while longer, sitting by my small lamp, touching old photographs. Not with sadness, but with acceptance. Family isn't blood alone. It's those who remember your sacrifices even when life gets warm and comfortable. Days passed, and word spread, because silence never stays silent forever. They learned the mortgage wasn't just behind, it was in default, and foreclosure lurked like a shadow. They tried negotiating, tried scrambling, even visited a lawyer. But truth is simple. They never owned comfort, they borrowed it. And the lender finally stepped away. Friends asked me later why I didn't forgive instantly. Why I didn't rush to rescue them again. But here's what people forget. We spend years teaching our children to walk, but somehow we forget to let them walk without us. I spent decades being the net beneath their feet. But nets are unseen until they're gone. And that, dear listener, is where the real story begins. Because losing comfort teaches lessons love never could. And soon, things took a turn they never expected. What happens when a child finally realizes the home he's standing in was built from a mother's sacrifices, not his success? When the bills stack higher than pride? When apologies come not from the tongue, but from humility? This next part is where truth begins to unfold. Weeks slipped by like pages curling at the corners of an old book. I spent my days as I always had, quiet mornings with tea, afternoons tending to the house, evenings with my knitting needles tapping like soft rain. But this time, something inside me was different. I wasn't waiting anymore. Not for a message. Not for a knock. Not for permission to matter. I had finally made peace with the silence. Then one afternoon, around mid-February, I was dusting the picture frames on my mantel, Daniel as a boy missing 2 front teeth, his father holding him high in the air, when I heard a voice outside. Not a knock. Not yelling. But the sound of car doors closing, hurried footsteps, whispers. Curious, I peeked through the curtains. Daniel and Melissa stood on my porch. She wasn't dressed like the polished woman who sipped wine behind Instagram-perfect Christmas trees. No makeup this time, eyes swollen, hair unkempt. Daniel looked tired too, really tired. A kind of tired comfort never shows. I opened the door slowly. They stood there like children waiting outside the principal's office, not sure what punishment waits on the other side. Daniel spoke first. Mom, can we talk? I nodded and stepped aside. Melissa followed, but this time, she didn't brush past me like she owned the room. She entered gently, hands folded, eyes lowered. She sat on the edge of the couch as if afraid to disturb the furniture she once considered beneath her standards. I took my chair by the window, the one that creaks, the one that holds more memories than any luxury sofa ever could. Daniel cleared his throat. We met with the bank, Mom. They said we're already behind on payments. They want the full balance or they'll start the foreclosure process. I listened silently. He continued. We tried getting a loan, but interest rates are high. Savings are low. We thought we were doing well, but I guess we were living softer than we realized because you were patting the ground beneath us. Melissa spoke next, her voice small, like a child confessing a lie. I didn't know you helped that much. Daniel told me you gave a down payment, but I thought that was all. If I had known. She paused, swallowing hard. I would have never let things get this far. I looked at her, not with anger, but with truth. You didn't know because you never asked, dear. Her eyes watered. Not from pride this time, from regret. Daniel leaned forward, elbows on his knees. We're in trouble, Mom. We might lose the house. I nodded slowly. A house isn't lost when bricks fall, it's lost when gratitude fades. They both grew quiet. Silence has a way of teaching better than speeches. Melissa sniffled. We were wrong. Leaving you out, that party, the message. I didn't mean to make you feel unwelcome. I breathed in deeply, letting her words settle. You didn't have to mean it. You just had to do it. Truth, gentle, but sharp. Daniel reached for my hand across the table. His grip was warm, trembling. Can we make this right? My heart softened, but forgiveness is not a switch. It is a bridge, and bridges are built plank by plank. Before I could answer, Melissa whispered, Would you consider helping us again? Even temporarily? At least until we can stabilize? There it was. The real reason they came. For a moment, memories rose like waves. Nights I counted pennies to feed Daniel. Mornings walking to work in cold rain. Birthdays spent sewing clothes instead of buying them. The inheritance untouched until their future needed it. All so they could live without worry. But worry teaches value more than comfort ever will. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the little garden outside. My rose bush slept beneath the frost, waiting for spring to bloom again, just like second chances. Finally, I spoke. I'll think about it. Melissa's eyes widened, hope flickered. Daniel sat up straighter. Thank you, Mom. Truly. Thank you. But I raised my hand gently. On one condition. They exchanged nervous glances. Not money. Not documents. Respect. Daniel nodded eagerly. Of course. But I continued. I want Sunday dinners. Here or at your home, but I want a seat at the table. Not out of courtesy, out of love. And I want my grandkids to know their grandmother, not the woman who's only invited when it's convenient. Melissa wiped her tears. You'll have that. I promise. I watched her closely. Promises are easy when fear stands behind them. Harder when comfort returns. But for now, I accepted it. Then let's rebuild. Slowly. Carefully. They stayed an hour longer. We talked, not like strangers fighting for peace, but like family trying to remember how love feels. Melissa apologized again, this time without pride hiding behind her words. Daniel hugged me before leaving, and for the first time in years, I felt that warm little boy again, the one who used to say he'd take care of me someday. But life doesn't rush healing. The road ahead would still curve with shadows. Because even when love returns, trust returns slowly. And soon, a dilemma would rise, forcing me to choose between saving them again or letting them learn through struggle. Forgiveness is easy to speak, but difficult to live. Especially when life asks you to decide, do you step in and save the very people who pushed you out, or do you let them fall so they finally learn why roots matter? What happens next is the choice no mother ever wants to make. After that evening, things slowly began to shift, like winter snow melting into the first hint of spring. Not all at once, not dramatically, but with subtle changes you feel before you see. Daniel visited me every Sunday as promised. Sometimes he came alone, sometimes with the children, shy at first, then bouncing around my living room like they once did when the world was simpler. Melissa joined occasionally too, though awkward smiles still lingered between us like unfinished sentences. I didn't rush. Respect grows the way bread rises, slow and steady, not forced. Still, I noticed something. Every visit, Daniel's eyes carried worry. Bills were piling, the second notice from the bank had come, their budget grew tighter. The house they once filled with laughter now echoed with whispers of fear. One Sunday afternoon, I served homemade stew and cornbread. We ate quietly until Daniel finally spoke, the kind of honesty a man says only when pride has crumbled. Mom, we tried to make payments this month. We barely made a dent. The bank gave us 30 days before they moved forward. Melissa's eyes glistened. She wasn't wearing perfection anymore, she was wearing reality. Sometimes trials do what comfort never could, they humble the heart. She looked at me and whispered, "We don't want money. We want advice. How did you manage life when things were so hard and you were alone?" Her voice carried sincerity this time, not entitlement. So, I told them the truth. I survived because I didn't fear struggle. Hardship teaches gratitude. When you've known hunger, you don't waste bread. When you've known loneliness, you treasure presence. When you've worked for everything, you recognize gifts. Daniel listened as if hearing me for the first time in his life. But then, inevitably, the question arrived. Mom, do you think you could help us with the payments? Just until we stabilize? We'll pay you back. I folded my hands in my lap. The room felt small, heavy. I had promised to think, and I had. For weeks. I wanted to say yes. A mother's instinct is to protect, always. But love without boundaries becomes self-erasure. So I answered carefully. I could. But I won't, not fully. Not like before. Their faces tensed with confusion. You must learn the value of what you nearly lost. If I save you completely, you'll forget again. And I won't be erased twice. Melissa nodded slowly, tearfully. Daniel asked quietly, "Then, what can you offer?" I took a deep breath. "I'll help with a portion, not all. Enough to keep you afloat, but not enough to let you float comfortably." Their shoulders relaxed, not with relief, but with understanding. In return, I continued, "I want one thing." They waited. Time. Not out of obligation, out of love. Dinner every week. Phone calls. Birthdays spent together. Respect not asked, but shown. Daniel nodded firmly. We will. We promise. And I believed him, not because of his words, but because humility had softened him. But life has a strange way of testing promises. 1 week later, a letter arrived. The bank offered them one final option, a restructuring plan, but it required a significant upfront payment. Without my support, they couldn't do it. With my support, they barely could. Daniel visited again, this time alone. He sat across from me, hands rubbing anxiously. "Mom, the lawyer said if someone else co-signs with us, we could save the house. But they'll need proof of income. You're retired, but your trust fund, if you open it again, we might manage." He waited. My heart weighed heavy. I loved that house, not for its bricks, but because it held my son's laughter, my grandchildren's footsteps, my late husband's dream. But helping again meant something more than money. It meant risking falling back into invisibility. I asked gently, "Tell me, Daniel, if I save your home again, will I be welcome in it? Truly welcome, not tolerated?" He bowed his head. Quiet answered louder than words. "You will be. You already are." I studied his face. No arrogance. No expectation. Just a boy grown into a man who finally understood where home truly begins, in gratitude. Still, something inside me hesitated. Because love can heal, but memory protects. Daniel, losing comfort taught you something. Don't forget it when life becomes warm again. He reached across, holding my hands with his own. "I won't. I swear." And for the first time in years, the promise felt real. So I agreed. Not blindly. Not silently. Not invisibly. I helped them with boundaries. We reopened part of the trust, but under conditions that included my involvement, my respect, my place. The bank accepted. The foreclosure froze. A lifeline, not a rescue. When Melissa heard, she came to my house, not to demand, not in anger, but to thank me. She stood at my kitchen counter, hands trembling. "I judged you, Margaret. I thought your presence meant interference. I was wrong. You weren't trying to take space, you were giving us one." Tears slipped down her cheeks, warm and sincere. I touched her hand gently. Sometimes family doesn't break, they forget. And all it takes is one wound to awaken memory. She nodded, crying softly. "Thank you for not giving up on us." I smiled. We don't give up on family. We grow them. And for a moment, just a moment, everything felt right. But life never delivers healing without a final test. And soon, something unexpected would happen, one more twist neither of them saw coming. A twist that would change the meaning of home forever. They thought the lesson was about money. They believed the pain was about a paused mortgage. But the truth? The real lesson was much deeper, about love, belonging, and the price of forgetting the hands that built your comfort. This last part is where everything comes full circle. Weeks passed, and little by little, repairs were made, not to walls or roofs, but to hearts. Sunday dinners returned like an old hymn remembered. The grandkids sat at my table again, elbows messy with gravy, laughing with crumbs stuck to their sweaters. I taught them to cut pie with gentle hands, same way I'd taught their father once. I watched them grow into spaces they once forgot I filled. Melissa started calling, first with updates about the house, then simply to ask how I was. She'd drop by with flowers sometimes, or to help fold laundry, as if trying to stitch herself into the fabric she once tried to remove. Apologies slipped out naturally now, not rehearsed, not forced, just soft acceptance of past mistakes. One evening, I heard a knock again. But this time, when I opened the door, Melissa stood there holding a small box wrapped in gold ribbon. Her eyes were gentle, not sharp like the winter night we last fought. "This is for you." Inside was a framed photo, our whole family together at Sunday dinner. Me at the center. Grandkids hugging my arms. Daniel and Melissa smiling behind me, warm, genuine, not for a camera, but for memory. My eyes watered. Not from pain, but from healing. "You belong with us, Margaret," she whispered. The words I longed to hear for years. Not demanded. Not begged for. Offered. But life wasn't done writing its lesson. It never is. Early spring arrived. My garden finally woke, roses pushing through earth like forgiveness blossoming. The birds returned with songs that sounded like hope. And one warm Sunday, Daniel said he had something important to share. At dinner, he stood up nervously, clearing his throat. "Mom, we want you to move in with us." The room froze, not in fear, but in surprise. Melissa nodded with a sincere smile. "Not because we need your money, but because we want your presence. Your chair shouldn't be distant anymore. It should be at our table every day." Oh, how my heart swelled, but my wisdom spoke louder than my emotion. I smiled kindly and shook my head. Children grow strong when they learn to stand. And you are standing now. I will visit often, but this little home of mine holds memories your walls cannot. Daniel's eyes glistened, not with disappointment, but understanding. "As long as you know you're welcome." "I do, my love. I do." Sometimes love isn't moving in. Sometimes love is choosing to stay where your soul breathes easiest and still being cherished. Months passed. The mortgage plan worked, and slowly they recovered. Not because I carried them, but because I guided them while letting them walk. Their home no longer rested on my hidden shoulders. It rested on effort, communication, and grateful hearts. One late summer day, I sat in my rocking chair by the open window, warm breeze filling my living room. Daniel arrived quietly, like sunlight slipping through curtains. He sat beside me, holding a folded piece of paper. "Mom, do you know the deed change form we filed months ago?" I raised a brow. "Yes. The one with the bank?" He smiled softly and handed me the paper. "We added your name to the house. Not for ownership, for honor. You won't have to pay again. But your name should rest on what your love built." My hand trembled. For years, I carried them unseen. Now they carried my name inside their home. Not as an obligation. As legacy. A moment I will remember even when memory fades. He hugged me then, longer than he had since childhood. The kind of hug that says I finally understand. The kind that rewrites old pain into new peace. Melissa joined, placing her hand over mine. "You're not just immediate family, Margaret. You are the foundation." And for the first time since James passed, I felt something I thought was gone forever, complete belonging. As I sit here telling you this story now, my tea warm between my palms, I share not to expose anyone, nor to seek pity, but to remind you, yes, you listening right now, that love must be seen, not assumed. Effort must be valued, not expected. And the quiet ones? The ones who stood behind everything you have today? Their silence isn't weakness. It's grace. People forget the hands that carried them when life becomes soft. But losing comfort teaches gratitude sharper than any scolding ever could. If someone cast you aside, uninvited you from tables you built, dismissed your love, listen carefully. You are still worthy. You are still enough. And you do not have to beg for a seat you earned. Sometimes walking away is not abandonment, it is self-respect. Sometimes stopping your help is not revenge, it is a reminder of your value. Sometimes silence is not weakness, it is justice. And when love returns humbled, cherish it, but never forget the lesson. Because peace is not given. Peace is chosen. Final message to viewers. My dear listener, thank you for hearing my story. If yours sounds even a little like mine, know this. You are not alone. You are not invisible. Your love mattered, and still does. Leave your story in the comments, or send it privately if your heart shakes too much to share publicly. This space is for those who gave everything and learned to stand tall again. I'm Granny May. And this is where stories heal. If you're still here, subscribe, stay close. We have more truths to tell, and we're just warming the kettle.